Hello and welcome to Marineford TCG. My name is Joe and today we're going to be looking at set 9. So set 9's been out for 3 months now in Japan. It's coming out in a couple of weeks for us over in the West. And we're starting off our card reviews. So we've had a good amount of time to see how these cards actually play out in the format. The Japanese format's developed quite a lot. And I think we've got enough data now to make a pretty accurate rating of how these cards are going to fare in the West. Of course, there's always things that sometimes we come up with that the Japanese didn't. A good example of that is the ST14 Luffy deck, the Black Luffy. That was really created in the West. It did see a little bit of success in Japan. That was much more of a Western invention. So we're starting today with red, and let's get into it. Before we start rating cards, I've got to explain to you my ratings. So starting at the bottom, 1 is pack filler. Most of your vanillas are going to fall into this, unless there's specifically a use for them. Cards are just bad. A lot of events fall here, sadly. A lot of the events they make are just pretty bad. Number 2, I've got a card that has potential for the future, or is an experimental include, or a rogue pick. So basically, anything that's staple in a rogue deck is going to be given a 2. So, for example, anything in the Calgara deck right now, right? So Calgara is definitely a rogue deck at the moment in 8.5. So you could give anything in that is a 2. For potential, that's a bit harder to give an example of, but I think cards that have potential for the future. A good one, when EBO1 came out, you could have said Laboon had potential. It didn't really do anything for a couple sets, but now it's pretty good in 8.5, and it's going to be insane in 9 with Blackbeard. And experimental is just cards that I think haven't been played around with much. I've not seen people in Japan use them. Maybe that's because they tried them and they were bad, so they never played them. Or maybe that's just because they haven't tried them enough yet. We'll see. Hard to give an example of that one. 3 is a tech card in a top deck, so something that's not mandatory, but is certainly a good option. So you could give something like, what could we say for that? Something like Mansherry is a tech at the moment in Lucci, and it's also a tech in Blackbeard in set 9. I'd give Mansherry a 3, and a key card in a tier 2 deck. You could say something like a big Ichiji. Rayjuice's not a tier 1 deck, but that Ichiji I'd give a 3 out of 5. Because without Ichiji, the Rayjuice deck's doing nothing. He's a key card. 4, I would say, is a key card in a top deck. Pretty self-explanatory. For an example of that, we can go with 9-cost Yamato in an L. It's definitely not meta-defining, and it's probably not staple because you're not seeing it in anything else other than an L at the minute. But it's definitely a key card for an L, and an L is a top deck, whether you like it or not. So 5 out of 5, it's the cream of the crop, your best of your best. Meta-defining cards and staple cards, your 8-cost Morias, your 4-cost Rebekahs, your 4-cost Jinbeis, the cards like that without them, the decks just fall apart. Or are, like, super important in more than one top deck. So now that we've gone over the ratings, I hope that makes sense, and let's move on. So the first card is Shanks, a bit of a curveball. For leaders, I'm not strictly following those, because there's no such thing as a staple leader, right? And he's not a key card in the deck. He is the deck. So for leaders, I'm just more rating it on where I think it will be. So tier 1 is obviously 5. Tier 1.5 is 4. Tier 2 is 3. Rogue is 2. And Bonk is 1. So I think Shanks is going to be a tier 1.5 deck. He's had top 16 cuts here and there, but he's not been consistently topping in the way that a lot of other leaders have in Japan. So Shanks, what does he do? He is a 5-life leader, 5,000 power, monocolor red. And once per turn, when your opponent attacks, you give something minus 1,000. Effect's great. You can use this in 2 main ways. You use this to slow the game down by protecting yourself, whilst developing little dudes in the start and building up to your big control pieces. Things like Benn Beckman, things like the Edward Newgate from the starter deck, Silver's Rayleigh from set 8, and then some of the other cards we're going to cover later. Or you can use this as a rush deck to protect your early plays. Things like your Rush Sorrow. You can play that out and then you'll use your leader effect to make it harder for your opponent to deal with that. And then just continue to put on so much pressure that your opponent can't afford to attack your life because they're constantly dealing with your board. So they're the 2 ways that you can build this guy. I've given him a 4 out of 5 because he's not meta-defining. It's hard to rate leaders on this scale, right? Because what's a staple leader? Hard to say. Is it one that's consistently topping? Well, Shanks is topping. I wouldn't say he's consistently topping. You get top 16s where he's in there, as maybe 1 or 2, and then you get ones where he's not there. Compared to decks like Purple Luffy and Blackbeard and Doflamingo, he's just not as consistent, so I've given him that 4-star rating. He's going to be a good deck. It's going to be probably tier 1.5 or bottom of tier 1. But that's enough for Shanks. Let's move on to some of the Shanks cards. So first up, we've got Uta. This is a staple card in Shanks. It's not crazy. It's not going to change the deck. And there are indeed Shanks builds that don't play Uta. They're typically more of the rush focus builds. So it's just a simple top 5 search. It's not Red Hair Pirate, so you can't search for Uta with Uta or with the event, which is interesting. But here are the targets you can search. We're going to cover most of these. The only one that's not in this set is this Shanks from set 6. He on play KOs a 10k power dude, which is pretty good. Uta, I mean, what's more to say? It's a searcher. I'd give it 4 out of 5. It's a searcher in a good deck. Shachi and Penguin. So Shachi and Penguin's a 4/5 1k, Heart Pirates, and when attacking, you give something minus 2,000 power for the turn. So I think this actually has... This was designed for the new promo lore leader, right? But that leader's terrible. I've put him here to acknowledge that he was designed for that. But I actually think this has a little bit of potential in Sanji. It's competing with the Brook that for Don X1 gives minus 2 to 2 things. But this not needing Don X1, I think, does give you a little bit more flexibility. And typically, you're not really attacking 2 things with Sanji, because you only have 1 guy. A lot of the times your opponent's clearing the board. But this is competing for the slot with Brook. Brook is obviously searchable because Sanji's typically run as a Straw Hat package with the Nami searcher. But you could try this. I think this has decent experimentation. And of course it combos with Nico Robin to KO 5 and Pell to KO 6. I've given it 2 for experimentation in Sanji. I don't think it's going to see very much play anywhere else. And this lore leader is terrible. Anyway, next up we've got Big Shanks. So I think this is a 5-star card. This is one of the best cards in the set. He is a 10/12 with the 4 Emperors and Red Hair Pirates type. He has Rush, just standard, and all of your opponent's characters have minus 1,000 power. This card's phenomenal. What is there to say? If you've played against Foxy, or indeed played Foxy, you know how annoying that minus 1,000 power is on your turn when you're attacking, but this is also when you're defending. So if you've got a tapped character, say you've got a tapped, the 9-cost Shanks, right? He's 11,000 power, that's pretty big. You drop this Shanks, it goes down to 10, suddenly you're attacking 12 into 10, and Bonnie's got to give you 2 cards. And this is just so impactful. It makes all your other swings just 1k stronger effectively. Any of those 6k blockers, annoying things like Queen, Kid, Borsalino, so on and so forth, just turns them into 5k. They're no longer free blocks. It can't be overstated how nuts this is. And the fact that it's Rush gives it a lot of game into things like Blackbeard, because you negate all their 12-cost Blackbeard blockers down to 11. So if they want to block, they've now got to give you a 2k rather than just a 1k, which is pretty good. If you stack these, I mean, I don't think I need to tell you how broken it can be if you can stack these. Minus 2,000 power across the board is crazy. One of the reasons why Foxy is so good. That 7-cost Foxy is just nuts. And this is pretty much just a better version in a better colour. So this is seeing play in Shanks, obviously. There's also seen a little bit of play in Monkey D. Luffy. At the start of the format, this was much more popular in the Luffy. They seem to have sort of transitioned away from it now. But you can definitely play it in RP Luffy. It's no joke, it's very real. And don't be surprised if your RP Luffy opponents play this, especially if they're playing a more rush-focused one. So this also combos with cards. Like, this card does everything, right? Because you're doing minus 1,000 power, and this is going to stick on the board, unless you're against black, and they can remove it by a cost. Because 12k power is just ridiculous. This combos really nicely with Benn Beckman. It lets him hit a 7. It lets Newgate hit a 6. And it lets Rayleigh KO a 7. Or move the power distribution around differently, right? Rayleigh is hard to just give you a flat number, but it does let Rayleigh hit a 7. I think this is great. This card is definitely a 5 out of 5. It's seeing play. It's one of the defining cards of Shanks. And it's also seeing sort of a tech option in Red Purple Luffy. I think this is clearly a 5-star card. If you can get your hands on some of these, you're laughing. Next up, we've got Silver's Rayleigh. But this is kind of like Queen, right? He is a red character with the Roger Pirates type, 5 cost, 6k, 1k counter is lovely, and he's a blocker. These 5/6 blockers, we've seen them time and time again. Queen, Kid, Shaka, great stat line. And on play, if your opponent has 2 or more characters with an original power of 5,000 or more, that is original power, so any debuffs from, I don't know, like a Gordon or anything like that, wouldn't impact your ability to draw with Rayleigh. You get to draw 2, trash 1, so it's the same as Queen. You don't have to don -1, but you do have to meet this condition. This is seen play in both Shanks and RP Luffy. This is fairly staple in both, but it's not 100%, so I've given it that 3-star rating, because this is more of a tech option. You do see this more often than not, but it's not always there. You could give this 4 if you want. I would respect giving this 4. It's definitely not a 5-star card, but I think 3 or 4 is fair for Rayleigh. And I'll put these guys here because these are what you'll meet your condition early, right? Your opponent goes Jinbei on 4, you can go Rayleigh on 5. Opponent goes Luffy Taro, turn early on their 5 Don with Purple Luffy, you can go Rayleigh on your 6 and draw a couple cards, get a nice big blocker up. It's not too bad. I don't think this card's crazy. I think this card is slightly overrated myself, but I think it's still a good card, and you're going to want to play set to future-proof yourself. This will come up time and time again. I've got Howling Gabu here. He's a 5/7 vanilla red hair pirates. You're not playing this. People tried this right at the start. I don't know why. This card's clearly awful. Got Heat. He is a 3/4 blocker with 1k counter. He is part of the Kid Pirates type. And on play, you give one of your power 4,000 or lower leaders plus 1,000 for the turn. So this exclusively combos with Red Purple Kid, exclusively in the early game. I think this card's pretty bad, but I've given it a 2 for experiment, because you will play it in Kid, but Kid sucks. I've given it a 2. You could give it a 1 if you want, but I think this card's okay. But yeah, only in RP Kid. Building Snake is a functional reprint of Gordon or Razemax. He's a 1/2 red hair pirates, and you can activate main, send him to the bottom, and give something minus 3,000 power. That's pretty cool. This was seeing a lot of playing Shanks at the start of the format. This has sort of fallen off a little bit, but you're still quite often seeing 2 or 3 of him. This is obviously much more of the control build of Shanks. Combos really nicely. Lets Benn Beckman hit a 9, which is Moria, right? That's pretty relevant. Lets Newgate hit an 8, which is Jack. Lets Rayleigh hit a 9, which is Moria. And lets Shanks hit anything. So if your opponent drops a Shanks and you've got a Building Snake on the board, you can ship him out, play your own Shanks for 10, and kill their Shanks. It's alright. This card's fine. I've given it a 3. It's a tech option in Shanks. You're not really playing it anywhere else because you're not playing Red Hair Pirate Searchers. It has no advantage over Gordon or Razemax and anything else. In fact, they may have an advantage over it because Revo Army's a decent type and Film is sometimes searchable. Next up, we've got Benn Beckman. I think this is arguably the best red card in the set. This is definitely competing with Shanks, but this is quality card. I love this card. So what Benn Beckman does is he's a 7-cost 7k, Red Hair Pirates, counter 1,000, which on a 7 cost, ooh, that's juicy. They've done a few of these recently. There's a Crocodile in the buggy coming up, who has the exact same stat line, 7/7 1k. I love this stat line, big fan of this. But anyway, what he does is on play, you trash one of your opponent's characters with power of 6,000 or less. That's great. You trash a 6k. This hits so many annoying things. The 5-cost Sabo blocker, bang, gone. Borsellino, gone. This is great. Obviously, anything with 6,000 you can hit, but those are the ones that specifically it matters about trashing, because they're obviously immune to KOs. But yeah, this gets around just so much. This is such a good card. This is staple in Shanks. This is always a 4 of in Shanks. It's one of the best cards in Shanks. I've also seen people playing this in RP Luffy, as well as like more rogue red decks. This is an amazing card, and it even combos with some of your other cards, right? If you play Building Snake, you can hit a 9. If you play Big Shanks, you can hit a 7. 7's not that relevant, but you know, it's worth knowing. And if you play Hongo out, you can tap him to hit an 8, which is nice. If you just have like a Hongo on the board, you can hit Jack with this, which is really clean. I can't say enough good things about Benn Beckman. I think this card's wonderful, and you should definitely get a playset of this if you can. This will come up time and time again in the future. It's not leader locked. You'll see it being played in pretty much every meta red deck, I imagine. Next up, we've got some not so good cards. We've got Bonk, Punch, and Monster. So what Bonk Punch is a 4/5 1k Red Hair Pirates, and on play you play a monster from your hand. Monster is a 3/4 1k Animal Red Hair Pirates, and he does say if your character Bonk Punch would be KO'd by an effect, you may instead send this character to the trash. He's an animal, so you can summon him with Chopper. I don't think you want to. This effect's terrible. But, and Bonk Punch's other effect is Don X1 when attacking. This character gains power plus 2000 for the turn. So for 1 Don, he becomes an 8k when attacking. It's just fine. This effect is just fine. And you're playing all this bulk in your deck. It's not got the Ohm Holy effect where you get to search for the Holy. You've got to just have the whole combo. I think it's just garbage. This is bulk. It gives you a bit of protection against something like Lucci, which is why he's here. But yeah, don't play Bonk Punch and Monster. Just play something better. Something better like Yasopp, maybe. So Yasopp is a 5/6. Red Hair Pirates, 1k counter. Solid stat line, can't complain. On play, up to one of your leaders gains 1000 power at the end of your opponent's next turn. So if they play Nika, that goes away, which is always worth mentioning. Because these effects always end at different times, like the Nugate, the Yasopp, and the the yellow baby Luffy Ace Sabo guys. They all sort of end at different times, but so it's worth noting what ends where with Nika. But this is just quality, right? He also has Don X1 when attacking, gives something minus 1000 power for the turn. That effect's fine. That effect's not too crazy. It means if you're swinging into a 6k, for 1 Don you can be swinging 7 on 5, which is pretty good. You know, 3k above is what you want to swing, or 2k above requiring 3k counter. But yeah, this on play is great. You play this on curve in Shanks or Luffy, you're effectively turning your leader into a 7k leader in Luffy, or a 7k leader for 1 swing with Shanks, because you have your leader effect. Great defensive card. I think I'd give this a 5 out of 5. It's staple in Shanks. There are builds popping up that aren't playing it, but vast majority of builds are playing it at 4. And the same with Luffy. There are builds that aren't playing it, but the vast majority of builds are playing it at 4. And this minus 1000 does let you combo with your Kara effects, your Nugate, your Beckman, your Rayleigh. Most relevant with Nugate, if you play this on 5, you play Nugate on 7, you give a Don to Yasopp for his effect, and then Nugate can Kara 6. Pretty nice, but also if you're on evens, you can put 1 Don on him, do his effect, and then play Beckman to Kara 7. Again, 7k, not the most relevant stat line, but 6k with Nugate is pretty relevant. And I'm a big fan of Yasopp. I think this is easily a 5-star card. Staple in 2 decks. What's not to love? Definitely get yourself a playset. It's only rare and there's no alt art, so could be a cheap one. Next up, we've got Limejuice. I'm giving Limejuice a 4. I think this is one of the best red 2Ks we've had since, like, Utama. This is quality. This is not leader locked, unless all the translations are horribly wrong. But he's a 3/3 2K, Red Hair Pirates, and what he does is, on play, one of your opponent's characters with power 4000 or less cannot activate blocker for the rest of this turn. So this is not as good as Hachi, right? But it's not far off. It's pretty good. So this is staple in Shanks. You're not seeing it in RP Luffy because they're generally choosing to just play searchable 2Ks. And they already have Hachi. They don't really need this effect. But I would be really surprised if this didn't see play in other red decks in the future. Once we get more red decks that are meta relevant, aren't also purple, I think Limejuice will see even more play. I've put here some of the targets you can affect with this. Your Rosnante, your Beige, your Bonnie, your Onami is in like every purple deck right now, and Rebecca's in every black deck except Blackbeard. A whole bunch of really relevant cards you can just turn off when you're going for game. Great card, great 2K, easily a 4 out of 5. It's not meta defining, but you could argue it's 5 for staples, but I just don't think we're quite there yet. Hongo, I reluctantly give a 4 because it is a key card in Shanks. You are playing this in Shanks. It's your other 2K with Limejuice. Hongo has the same stat line, 3/3 2K. He's a red hair pirate, and you can activate main, rest him. If your leader is a red hair pirate, so he's leader locked, you give something minus 2000 power. This is very reminiscent of the Toshigi from Starter Deck 6 that has 1k more power and gives minus 2 cost. Minus 2000 power is definitely better than minus 2 cost, but they're very similar cards, right? So this Hongo obviously combos with, you know, your standard stuff. Let's bring Beckman KO on 8. Let's Rayleigh KO on 8. Let's Nugate KO 7. Good card. You can't complain about Hongo. He lets Shanks KO at 12, but that's not very relevant. But yeah, great card, and it is a staple in Shanks, right? Because you're playing him mostly because he's searchable. But the effect is relevant. The effect comes up. It's not one of those 2Ks like a poo that you just never play. This is a good card, but unfortunately he is leader locked. So I was tempted to give this a 3, but I've given him a 4 because he is staple. Lucky Roux is also leader locked. He is a 4/5 1k blocker and Red Hair Pirates. On KO, if your leader has the Red Hair Pirates type, KO one of your opponent's characters with an original power of 6,000 or less. So this is like a double-edged sword, right? Original power. But this doesn't count any buffs that your opponent does. That includes putting Don on. Unlike Gum Gum Fife is Red Hawk. Gum Gum Fife is Pistol Red Hawk, whatever it is. That is just power. If your opponent puts Don on their dudes, they play around Red Hawk, but they don't play around Lucky Roux because this is original power. However, this doesn't let you give minus 1k to one of your opponent's guys with something like Shanks. You can't hit a 7 with the leader effect. You can only hit a 6. But this is still great. This is still great, right? Here, I've put some targets here. If Lucci KOs him, you can just kill him right back, which is nice. It's not too crazy, but, you know, getting rid of Lucci, always pretty good. You can kill Jinbei or any of his friends that he summons. You can kill Zorojuro and Sangoro in purple decks, which is very relevant. They don't have a great way to deal with Lucky Roux outside of resting it with Usahachi. But if they're spending 3 Don on that in the early game, or sort of the mid-early game, it's not very efficient. So Lucky Roux is a staple in Shanks. There are some lists that aren't playing him, but the vast majority are. I think this card's quality, especially into Purple Luffy. It's not as good into Dofi, right, because they can bounce it with lore. But into Purple Luffy, you really want to see this in the early game. So I'm confident giving it that 4-star rating. This Rockstar, he's a 4/6 vanilla, Red Hair Pirates. You're not playing this. You're never playing this. When Lucky Roux exists, there is no reason to play this. 1 star. Wire is, I believe, the last character. He is a 4/4 2k Kid Pirate, so he's very clearly for Red Purple Kid. Don X1, if your leader has 7,000 power or higher and the Kid Pirates type, he gets Rush. 2Ks with Rush are always good, right? 2Ks with Rush are always good. Again, Red Purple Kid, not the most relevant leader. Definitely a rogue option. But his, when attacking, does buff him up to 7,000 power. This is basically always live. And as a 2k option with Rush, I mean, people play Jozu and Frenosuke, even though they kind of suck, right? But you're playing them because they're 2Ks with Rush. And randomly they'll win you games. And I think this is probably better than both of those. But yeah, either way, Wire's here. I've given him 2 for experimentation and Kid. But it's definitely a rogue option, right? It's not a good card. We've got Get Lost. This is a 3-cost event, Red Hair Pirates. This is activate main. You KO 2 of your opponent's characters with a combined power of 4,000 or less. This is horrible. This is one of the worst cards in the set. We've seen this on Sabo, right? This horrible Sabo from set 5 that they reprinted in the bloody reprint set over the black Sabo. This card's dreadful. I mean, this being an event doesn't make it any better. 1 star. We've got I Won't Forgive Anyone Who Messes With My Friends. This is a 2-cost event, Red Hair Pirates. Activate main. If your leader has Red Hair Pirates, they felt this was so broken they needed to leader lock it. Give something minus 3,000 for the turn. Then, if your opponent has a character with power 5,000 or greater, you draw a card. This is not great. This is like a Tempest Kick with a worse condition, with a slightly better effect, but it costs 2. I don't like this card at all. I don't like this, but people are experimenting with it. It's a very, very niche card in Shanks, right? But I've given it that 2-star rating because it being a niche card in Shanks is honestly just as good as being a good card in Kid, right? Triggers draw a card. It's definitely better than this, but this isn't great. It does obviously combo with your Newgate, Rayleigh and Beckman, but you hit an 8, a 9, and 9 respectively. But it's not great. It's clearly not great, is it? We got the Searcher event. 1 Don, come on, we'll fight you. 4 Emperors, Red Hair Pirates. Activate main, you look at the top 5. You grab a Red Hair Pirates that is not come on, we'll fight you. And bottom the rest. Triggers, draw a card. I wish this was trigger activate main. They could have given it this. I've given this a 3. This compares very unfavourably to Uta. Uta has counter. Uta is a character that can attack. And Uta can search come on, we'll fight you. Whereas come on, we'll fight you cannot search Uta because Uta is film. This is a tech option in Shanks, basically. Some people are playing sort of 1 or 2 of these if they just want to play more of a Red Hair Pirates focused build. Card's fine. It's not great, but it's a solid 3-star card, right? Shanks is a good deck. Come On We'll Fight You is a bit of a weird tech in it, but it's a tech nonetheless. Last card here for red. We've got the stage, Red Force, 2-cost stage, Red Hair Pirates type. And it's activate main, you may rest this stage if your leader has the Red Hair Pirates type. Give up to one of your opponent's dudes, minus 1,000 power for the turn. In theory, I think this is really good, but in practice, this is a 2-cost stage. It gives -1. You compare it to Ennie's Lobby, right? Ennie's Lobby was a 2-cost stage that gave -2 cost every turn, and had trigger play this card. If this had a trigger to just play it and costed 1, I think this would genuinely be a really strong card. But at 2, I just don't think it's value efficient at all. If I'm paying 2 Don, I'd honestly rather do this, give -3 and then draw a card, than play out this stage. This has got to stick for 3, or you've got to live for 3 turns after playing this to get any value out of this compared to compared to the event, or compared to like a building snake. I just think it's too slow. People have tried it, and when you see it come down, it generally means it's a free win. This obviously does combo with your dudes. I've put them here, but you know, it is what it is. So that was it for my review of all the red cards. That's all of them. I think generally speaking, the red is pretty good this set. First set in a while, I think we've been able to say that. Most of these red cards are playable. Shanks Leader is doing a good job of carrying, but some of these Shanks cards are really strong. The big Shanks, the lucky Roux, the Benn Beckman especially. Shanks have got some quality cards. I think if you're a red player, you're a red main, you can be pretty pleased this set. This is a good set for you. Let me know what you think. If there's anything you disagree with me on that you think is incredibly meta defining and I said was dog ass, let me know in the comments. I'm always here to have a debate. Let me know what you think the best red card is in the set. I think it's Benn Beckman personally. I could see an argument for this Shanks though. Anyway, thank you for watching. We'll have green up tomorrow, so please subscribe if you don't want to miss that. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.